There is always a philosophy for lack of courage. Albert Camus. This is Citadelium, episode 18, and I'm your host, Yuri Degaya. Today I want to talk about the practice of building citadels because it's 2021 and I think it's high time that we started bringing the theory that we've been discussing here on this show and in various blogs to practice. And this year I think is a good year because if you've been paying attention to what was happening last year, obviously things are not going very well in the world in general, and the globalist movement is getting bigger and bigger, and we are yet to see what's going to happen in the United States. But as it looks right now, the communist regime is setting themselves up pretty firmly there. So we'll see what's going to happen. Regardless, I think it's still along the path of nature to actually start building citadels and start thinking in terms of how the world full of citadels will operate. I think it's high time to start seeing some results in this regard. And as a matter of fact, I can already see some movements out there, and I've been personally invited to a few projects. So it's really good to see. And I just wanted to mention here that obviously. I already mentioned that before, that the theory and practice are completely different things, right? So as I said before in one of my episodes, I consider knowledge to be useless if it's not applied. You can learn many things throughout your life, but if you learn them just for the sake of knowledge, all you're doing is just essentially giving pleasure to your brain, but it's kind of a useless pleasure. It's just to invoke some kind of sense of satisfaction from this pleasure, and there is absolutely nothing that happens in the real world as a result of that knowledge. So I think, as I said before, great knowledge without application is only good for trivia games. And of course, you can have a parallel with Bitcoin here. So you can know a lot about Bitcoin. You can read all the articles and listen to all the podcasts. But if you know a lot but don't apply this knowledge in real world, and what do I mean by applying? Well, you run your own node. You follow the best practices in terms of how to do Bitcoin transactions. You maybe explain Bitcoin to other people who should know better. Then if you don't apply all this knowledge in the real world in the ways that I described and other ways, then I think that knowledge is quite useless. You shouldn't even study anything about it. That's why I'm not a believer of this approach that you have to know absolutely everything about, let's say, Bitcoin. You should only know what's relevant to you. And because Bitcoin right now, for example, is very new, it's still a new technology, although it's already 12 years old. There's still a lot of interesting things happening there. And if you're in Bitcoin every day pretty much, you still learn a lot of things that are happening. You are interested in learning the progress, but that's not because you want to satisfy your brain. It's just because things happen and you kind of read it like your morning newspaper. And I think a similar approach is applicable to building citadels. It's quite similar because you can learn a lot about citadels. You can learn the theory. You can learn Austrian economics and Bitcoin, and then put everything together and imagine this world of citadels in the future that is going to happen, I think, no matter what everybody thinks. According to natural law, of course, this may be a very long term project, but regardless of all that knowledge, I think you still have to put some work so that you can see some tangible results in the world. And I think this year is the year when things will really start moving. So, 2021. This is the year. Let's see some massive action in this domain, and I would like to explain to you some of the levels upon which these actions can be taken. Some levels of citadels that you can start building today, depending on your access to resources, on your knowledge, on how much labor you want to put into this. There are a few levels, and the lowest level, I guess, would be to start a family. A family is your own personal little citadel. It's where you have people of kin together. This is your blood, and of course, start a family because you don't want to be a lone wolf in the world that's coming. First of all, you'll need help. That's very simple, and of course. You'll need some companionship, and you'll need to leave your legacy to someone, and that would be, of course, your children. At the same time, when you grow up and grow old, there will be someone who will take care of you if you raise your children properly. Remember that children are the best pension plan that you may have. As a matter of fact, retirement didn't really exist before. Pension plans didn't exist before. They were all covered by next generations. So that's how it's supposed to be. That's quite natural. But that's just the beginning of it, of course. When I talk about actually building some kind of a citadel in the real world, and when it doesn't really concern interpersonal relationship, let's start with a homestead. A homestead would be obviously something that you tend to. That's your piece of land, that's your house, that's your little farm, that's everything you need to survive no matter what. So homesteads are really popular. They are getting really popular now. That's how it naturally was before, and that's one of the reasons why the parasites don't like people who have land and who have houses. It's because those people are, for the most part, independent from the rest of the system, because they can create their own food, they can create their own water, they can even create their own clothing, and if they are creative enough, they can get their own electricity too and live quite comfortably without being attached or connected to the rest of the civilization. So these skills are quite important, I think, and if you start your own homestead, your own little farm, it doesn't have to be too far away from the city if you really want the convenience of the big city for some reason. But it's good to have, and you can teach your children how to do all those things, how to do farming, take care of the animals, how to grow some vegetables and fruits if you are into them as well. So it's really the first level of the citadel that you can build. I think building homesteads will actually bring this independence that people had before. They didn't really have to depend on big government for help. Those people who have homesteads, those people who live this way, I think were the most resilient throughout time, and I think it's time to get back to this type of living. So the next level would be a community. Building a community is really important because while it's great that you can survive as purely on your homestead, sometimes you might need some help from other people, or you may need to exchange ideas or goods or services with someone. And building a community, whether it's a village or a little town or simply a neighborhood in town, is a great thing to do because you get like-minded people all together you can do many things together. Together you are much stronger. Together you can essentially have this campfire situation or church situation where you can gather every now and then and discuss various ideas, what's happening in the world, how you can help each other to go through these hard times if there are hard times. Building a community is great, and also there are some communities, there's some great examples of communities that are actually being built using Bitcoin. And there's a great example of a village in El Salvador, which is essentially hooked up pretty much completely to Bitcoin. All the businesses, all the merchants, and private individuals and families are starting to get on the Bitcoin bandwagon, and they have created their own little circular economy in which they accept Bitcoin for payments, they spend Bitcoin, they send each other Bitcoin. It's really great to see, and I think Bitcoin will allow more of such communities to appear very, very soon. As a matter of fact, I think there are more and more appearing as we speak, because Bitcoin gives you this independence in terms of your finance, in terms of your financial planning. You don't have to depend on central banking, on the central banking system, on central bankers who can print trillions and trillions, as we have seen in the past few months. This is completely crazy. So Bitcoin gives this safety net to a lot of people, and while some of them consider Bitcoin as an additional asset that they can have, I know quite a few people who have switched to Bitcoin pretty much 100%. So I think it's a big factor that Bitcoin plays in building communities. Now, if you have more resources, if you're well connected, and you're willing to put in a lot of work into this thing, you can actually start working on so-called special economic zones or special administrative zones. And we know that such zones exist all over the world, in some countries, even in China. These zones are different from the rest of the country in that they have separate economic systems. They have different laws and different taxes and different regulations when it comes to business and financial services and things like that. A lot of them are actually quite autonomous even in their legislation. So this is what I'm talking about, and there are a few outlets out there, non-profit organizations out there who are working tirelessly to make this dream of autonomous zones that can later maybe turn into their own sovereign city-states. They're working on making this a reality, and a couple of examples are the Charter Cities Institute and the Free Private Cities project by Titus Gebel. So if you haven't heard, for example, the Free Private Cities project participated in launching the Prospera project on the island of Roatan in Honduras, which is right now considered the most advanced special economic and administrative zone, or ZE as they call it, in the world. Why it is advanced is because they were able to secure a relationship with the government of Honduras, in which the government gives a lot of autonomy to this special zone on the Roatan Island. However, of course, it's not complete. It doesn't become independent. It doesn't become sovereign. The island still belongs to Honduras, and there are some restrictions in terms of employment. For example, businesses that start their operations on Roatan have to hire Honduran nationals. But there are quite a few advancements in this as well. For example, businesses can choose what kind of law and court system they use when there's a dispute, and there's a private law being practiced there. So this is a really good example of how people who work on these issues can actually solve them, and how some governments can be more open towards these things, because they can, if you can sell them the idea of future revenue that is dependent on these more or less autonomous zones, I think they will be more open to this. And I think in the world in which Bitcoin starts taking over the financial system and absorbing the assets around the world, I think in this world a lot more governments from various countries out there will be open to such ideas, because it's very simple. They will value Bitcoin more than some of their lands and some of their islands, and they will be able to exchange them, if not outright sell them to private individuals, then to exchange them for a certain amount of Bitcoins, and give those lands and territories a certain degree of autonomy. As a matter of fact, I think some of these countries will start competing with each other in terms of offering these lands and to entrepreneurial individuals who will want to build cities there. So, if you have this much powder in you, you can actually pursue these things too. You can get in touch with the Charter in Cities Institute. You can get in touch with private cities, and there's other initiatives out there. I recommend you to check them out and start building. And last but not least, online citadels. Of course, I talked about how the online or digital citadel will actually be quite important because as you may know, it's not very easy, as with the special economic zones, to build your own citadel in a physical world. The physical world is quite limited, and it is quite known that the parasites control quite a lot of it, and you may be at a disadvantage here. Essentially, it's quite difficult to manage to hide yourself from them, because you can probably get a piece of land somewhere in the mountains or in the prairies, somewhere in the middle of nowhere where you think they don't know you exist. But I think if you really become a problem, or if you're really not convenient to them, they will find you, and they may, shut you down, do whatever they see fit, right? So the physical presence has its own benefits, but it also has its own downsides. So a lot of people will start gathering online and building citadels, digital citadels, citadels that are communities of like-minded individuals who cooperate on multiple fronts. They can cooperate on different issues together, on issues of financial support, defense, business help, all kinds of opportunities out there for sure. And as I mentioned, that these online communities are not going to be strictly interest-based communities. They will be more multifaceted. They will encompass many different areas of life. They will pretty much be able to supply their members with anything they need to lead a more or less convenient life during this age of communism again. So I believe that many are being started in the world right now. I've been invited to quite a few of them. Some of them are a bit stale, others are more active, and a good example is the recent launch of the international brotherhood called Citadel One by Bitcoiners. It's essentially a brotherhood of Bitcoiners who see the world for what it is and where it's going, and there's a bunch of requirements for joining, of course, but like I said, there will be a bunch of them, and you will probably find the citadel that fits you the best. To finish off this episode, I just wanted to say that building a citadel requires effort. Whether you build it at a smaller level or at a higher level, whether you build a house, a family, a homestead, or up to the special economic zone, or whether you're building an online community, I think it requires a lot of effort. A homestead requires input from all family members. You have to tend to the land, to the animals, so you have to sell the produce if you have more, and that all requires labor, of course, and that's pretty much how farmers live their lives. Um, Communities in villages, they also need coordination from multiple households, multiple families, multiple businesses to get things done. So that requires some time and effort too. Special economic zones, I just explained, it's not an easy job. You have to have lots of connections, have lots of resources. You have to be politically and economically motivated enough to pursue such direction. And online citadels like Citadel One, they also need constant energy. They need constant momentum to keep going, to grow, and to develop because. As you know, people's attention span isn't really high right now. People switch from one thing to another. They lose interest quite quickly. So you have to keep them engaged. You have to keep the fire burning there, and that's why I think a lot of the startups or these online communities lose their energy, lose their momentum because the fire uh, just puts it just disappears simply because there's not much energy, not much happening. So you have to kind of always put some fuel into this fire and keep it going, and that requires a lot of effort. That requires time. That may even require financial contributions. So if you're thinking of starting a community, think about this too, because that is not a very easy endeavor. Maybe it's easier for you to find one that already exists or to join some people who are starting a new community instead of starting your own. Um, like I said before, the vast majority of people are more followers than leaders, and there are a bunch of people, a very, very few who are leaders who are able to start something off. And you might need to just look for those people and join them in what they're doing, and you'll be more happy that way. That's it. That's all I had to say for this episode. I think, like I said in the beginning, 2021 will bring us some big surprises, both negative and positive, and whatever happens, we should all probably adopt a stoic mindset and not be totally outraged or worried or excited about things. Whatever happens, happens, and take every day one day at a time and embrace what is rather than what could be or what should be, and do what is within your control. Do what you can to make an impact, whether it's local or regional or planetary in scale, and go about it this way. Thanks for joining in, and I'll see you next time.